Hello, mic test. working at a fast pace.
No, you have to vote before 10:30 to extend beyond 10:30
And
rule.
can you extend forever or just
No.
in 30-minute
Yes,
increments?
with 2/3 of the,
Oh, okay.
right?
To set the time at a regular meeting.
It's interesting.
At a regular meeting. 2/3 to set the time
Perhaps
only
reforms might be in order.
for the next meeting.
Duncan said, oh yeah, we used to go to midnight.
I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call to order the meeting of the Kodiak Island Borough North Star School Facilities Work Group. It is Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025, and it is 6:30 p.m. and we're in the Borough Assembly chambers. This is also being streamed, but the citizens' comments will be only allowed within the room here. So roll call, please.
Mr. Arndt,
Here.
Mr. Ledoux, Mr. Whiteside,
Here.
Mr. Litzel,
Here.
Mr. Pryor.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Next item we have is citizens' comments. Do we have anyone that'd like to come forward and speak at this time? Please do so. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to the agenda items. First thing is introductions. And Bo, I'll start with you, if you don't mind, for introduce yourself.
Yeah, Bo Whiteside, Kodiak Island Borough Assembly.
You want to turn on your mic, Larry? And pull it down?
Are we being broadcast?
YouTube, yeah.
Yeah. Repeat it, Larry, please.
Larry Ledoux, Kodiak Island Borough Assembly.
Amy Williams, Kodiak Island Borough Manager.
Scott Arndt, Kodiak Island Borough Mayor.
Cindy Micka, KIBSD Superintendent.
Mike Lutzo, Kodiak Island Borough School District School Board, and my apologies to the group, but I have only about an hour of availability. I talked with the mayor about that last night.
Yep.
Jim Pryor, School Board.
Thank you. First thing is Kodiak Island Borough School District update. I guess we'd be looking for it. You guys had a project manager that was looking into this and timeline and what your storage needs might be.
Okay, so our project manager through the summer is Geraldine Urban. She is our Director of Child Nutrition Services that we moved into this role to oversee the project. And so she's been working as the project manager since April timeframe, March-April timeframe, behind the scenes. We've had weekly meetings with all district level stakeholders, our directors, our principals. We've met every morning, once a week for about 2 hours, just for an update. And then we've had separate meetings with different groups in the district. But we have been working behind the scenes leading up to last week so that we would be ready for what we call the 4 days of move. So last Tuesday, while our secondary was still in school, our elementary students were not in school. And so we were able to utilize all of our elementary staff, teachers, and paraprofessionals. Most of our senior directors and above were also involved. We packed out rooms on Monday. We were 90% finished with all room pack-outs, on Tuesday, by the end of the day on Tuesday on day one. Pallets were packed as we got boxes. We staged and packed pallets by room number of where they were moving to. And so then those pallets were wrapped with shrink wrap, and we started actually moving pallets out that day to the receiving school. And so as soon as a cafeteria at a receiving school was full, we quit delivering pallets there. But we were emptying pallets about 10 minutes per pallet as they were arriving. And so what we were doing is making all calls. The pallet shipment has arrived, and then everyone would stop what they were doing at the receiving school. We'd go to those pallets. would unpack them and get them into the receiving classroom. And so as quickly as we were receiving pallets, we were able to unpack them and get the pallets back to the outgoing school so we could repack pallets. And so it was a pretty seamless. It was difficult. It was hard. I have never lifted as many boxes in a short time frame as during this time frame personally, and I know that I can speak for every elementary employee and director the same. The amount of work was incredible. That allowed us to, by Tuesday, we were 90% out of the outgoing schools. And so by the end of day Wednesday, we only had furniture left. All of our pallets and all of our boxes had been moved. And probably 50% of our furniture by the end of day Wednesday. Wednesday was dedicated to allowing our teachers to start unpacking in their new location. And when I did a check by end of day Thursday, between end of day Thursday and middle of Friday, the difference in the rooms, they're already, bookshelves are packed with their personal library books, curriculum is unpacked, organization is going on, and we are well on our way to teachers really not having much to do to set up their classrooms for the first day of school. And it was, I think that most of that is due to Geraldine's ability to foresee what we would need and pre-plan us. And so the pre-work that went into this was Geraldine, and she just kind of kept us going. But it was a hard lift. We got it done, and so now we have staff that we have hired through the month of June, comprised of teachers, paraprofessionals, and students, workers, who are just doing cleanup work at our schools. They're finishing the furniture that didn't get moved by the end of the day Friday, and helping us with some maintenance needs at those schools. So Geraldine still believes that with the workers that we have working for the month of June, that we should be finished with everything pulling out of North Star. So that's our goal by June 30th to be finished at North Star. Including maintenance needs that we need to do. Of course, that's fluid. I mean, we need to do a walkthrough with the borough, but right now, because of the amount of work we were able to do by end of day Friday, we are very confident that we will be finished at North Star by the end of June 30th, and ready for whatever the next phase is.
Okay. Got listed storage needs. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so right now we have all three gyms are pretty full of storage. A lot of it, we have really tried to go through, and if it was broken and not repairable, we tossed it. But there's still a lot of good furniture and materials. We have worked with our other educational entities, the Rock and the Christian School, and have been able to help them with some of their curricular needs. And so, but there's still a lot that we're going through. We plan on having that all consolidated at North Star within 3 weeks, moving everything out of East and Peterson and Maine that isn't being utilized in classrooms currently, or that we foresee a need of, and moving it to North Star, either for a surplus sale or storage.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge for everyone that in the audience here is Nate Root with YMCA Alaska. And thank you, Nate. So some of us have been talking with them, and I just want to make sure I introduced them to everyone here. From the Kodiak Island Borough update, Amy, would you like to present?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as we are looking at the future use of the building, we are, of course, very aware of what an asset that gym is. In order to have that gym be in play after the school district is out, we are interested in the cost of utilities and what janitorial services will look like, and then involving the city of Kodiak for their Parks and Rec services to make sure that we have schedules and just, so it can be used how it was in the past. And then looking at what that will cost us. And so we've had the talks inside of our budget discussions about what utilities would look like and how we can create a segment of just the restroom facilities and the gym up there and keep the rest blocked off, or how we want to deal with that. We do have plans to make roof improvements so that skylight no longer leaks. We have a skylight design that will hopefully fix those problems, and we understand there's some patching that needs to be done. And we wanted to talk to the district about if the security cameras on the outside work, if we can leave those in place, or you're taking those with you, or what that is. And then we had a question about door locks come up through your project manager that we want to address as well.
Okay. That's the basic. Should I go? At this time, pass out potential proposed 3-year plan. Cindy, if you could pass this down.
What 3-year plan? What 3-year plan?
It's right in front of me. If you hand to Nova, please. What this is we're trying to think a little bit about what we potentially would be looking to do. And you'll notice there's 2 possibilities here. One is the Kodiak Island Borough and the Kodiak Island Borough School District splitting it half and half. And the other one is the Kodiak Island Borough School District, and the city of Kodiak, basically thirds on there. And what that would cover is the minor building maintenance, maintain gym access via Parks and Recreation, janitorial services for the spaces used, and consider compatible uses that would not structurally alter the building. Nonprofit office space, children's museum, daycare, security, walkthroughs, cameras, continued use as an emergency shelter if necessary on there. And then review of the fiscal commitment each March. Ensure it aligns with each partner's objectives. Consult student count to see if current trends are continuing, and consider alternate uses / sale of the facility. It gives some time there. Earlier today I tried to reach out to one of the city council members, Bob Stanford, but he's out of town in Europe for the month of June, and talked with Pat Branson tonight. She's interested in the city participating on there. And what I talked to her about was potentially making Bob Stanford an ex officio member of the committee on there. So that's kind of giving you an update and trying to come up with some options here as to what might work and might not to get the discussion started. So, member comments? Yes. Jim?
I have a comment. I'm glad to hear that you've reached out to the city. I also talked to Mayor Branson today, And I think it's important, I mean, if they're involved in one-third, it would behoove to have somebody from the city to be representative. They may have a larger financial stake in the building than Kodiak or Island Borough School District does at this point. So I'm glad that you reached out, and we'll have somebody that will be able to participate in this.
Anyone else? Mike?
Thanks. I just want to note a couple thoughts. The first is the continued uncertainty that the district faces with budgeting, and that we're awaiting the governor's decision on a veto or not for this fiscal year, and then the uncertainty looks to continue and perhaps magnify in future fiscal years. So that's just a long way of saying I think the district's ability to commit to a 3-year plan is pretty thin right now. We'd obviously have to take that to the board and consider it year by year.
Yeah. What would be looking at is, would anticipate that utilities and some janitorial using a $90,000 three-way split, $30,000 a year. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. That's helpful. My memory is that we've allocated $70,000 for the next fiscal year in our budget for what we understood was half of utilities. And so that $90,000 total helps to frame out the commitment. That's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, so it'd be a $30,000 on there. So, anyone else? Larry?
Well, a building sitting vacant is going to die in Kodiak. We know that. I consider North Star to be a tremendous asset to the district. To replace it, it was $10 million to build. To replace it would be $30 million. In the early 1990s, the school district presented to the Borough Assembly a proposal to build a brand new high school. And the state would have paid 100% and was willing to do that. Instead, the Borough Assembly decided to use their savings to do remodels. Every summer, they would do a remodel to create classroom space. Mr. Pryor might remember some of these activities. Certainly Scott does. And the district spent $15, $20 million doing that kind of thing, got reimbursed for some, but not all by the state. And that decision cost us $80 million. And the original school was 1,200 students, not what it is now. And so if you look at our enrollment numbers, East next year projected 284, Maine 210. Maine is a small school, has about 10 classrooms, maybe more. It was built in an environment where we had very, very few intensive students. We've almost doubled the number of students. I don't know what you're projecting next year. I haven't looked at that kind of data. But the schools were never built to hold the kind of special needs spaces that special ed students require. So when you look at the overall design of the buildings, they don't really fit. East, as an example, doesn't really have a lot of special ed space. It has 20 classrooms, but you add special ed students to that and their needs, et cetera, et cetera. Same at Peterson. There are no empty classrooms in the district. Or I don't believe there are. Cindy, are there empty classrooms?
We currently have 10 empty classrooms at Peterson. Going into next year, we will be utilizing our spaces at Maine. We will have 8 general ed classrooms and then 4 special ed classrooms at Maine. And then at East, we will have between 15 and 16 general ed classrooms and then 4 special ed classrooms.
I've never seen an empty classroom but in a school, but I understand what you're saying. My concern is that, Kodiak's in sort of a flux in terms of growth. We all know that. If at one point in time St. Mary's went out of business, those kids came back into the district. Christian school got very close at one time. They're having a hefty enrollment. And And depending on what's happening with homeschool and charter schools, our enrollment could move dramatically upward. And then we would be in a position of needing a school, and we couldn't pay for it. So we're sort of in the same decision we were in the 90s. Do we want to make a conservative decision and try to sell the building and hope that we'll never need a building again? I don't believe the state is going to come through and build school buildings anymore. I mean, they can't, because whatever they do in the communities now, they have to do in REAAs, which is 100%. Okay. And so I think we need to be very careful. I believe the school needs to be used. It's an incredible facility. It's relatively new compared to our other facilities. But I do believe that whatever we do with it, whatever lease we do, it should have a 2-year vacation, meaning that within 2 years they need to vacate it so that we can reuse it if we need it. We can generally predict students who are coming into the district. Not always, but we're close enough that if we pack in those buildings, we'll need another facility. And the community at that time, and I don't think it's changed, did not want to bus kids from town into Peterson. We tried that once with our 6th grade. We sent all the Maine kids to Peterson. It did not work for a variety of reasons, and so they were reconfigured into town. So I understand the need to maintain it. I hope that somebody will come forward. But to try to sell this building, and then have a $30 million bill down the road when none of us are on the assembly or making decisions about the schools or the borough is not fair to our community. It wasn't fair when they said no to building a new high school. Kenai Peninsula built Skyview High School. They closed it for 2 years. They just knew the kids were coming, but the state paid for it. Colony High School was mothballed for 3 years. It sat empty. State paid 100%. What Kodiak did was, we're not going to do it. And so whenever you see I don't want to see that happen to North Star. I believe that it should be used. We should do everything we can to utilize it and certainly take the pressure off the school district as much as they have other business to do. But we need to protect the building in some way at the same time using it. So I'll just leave it at that. A lease with some kind of, with a certain amount of warning, we can have the building back in substantially the same way it is so it can be utilized as some kind of educational institution. So that's sort of where I am.
Right, and what this 3-year plan is, it gets looked at each year, Larry. And there's going to be no long-term leases with anybody in it. It'll be a year
No,
by year.
I appreciate that. On the other hand, having somebody that comes in and use it knows that they're going to have at least 2 years before they have to exit, may bring in, different clientele. But I like the 3-year plan.
What the intent is to see how it works. I'm not interested in hanging on to a building forever with that kind of low usage on there, just for the gym. I'm not interested in that personally. Then there's a certain point where you got to dispose of it when it's costing on there, because there'll be more upkeep on it. We're looking at, there's over potentially $1 million on the roof. At some time that's going to have to be spent, not necessarily today, but at some time. And so there's a point where it doesn't pay to hang on to, just like we learned in the villages with Carlick and Larson Bay. And we disposed of one of those schools in Larson Bay. So it's what this does is give everybody a little time to look at it. But we'll see what happens from there. And what Amy and I were looking at was a minimal cost for, potentially this 3 years, but it's looked at each year on there. So, Bo?
Thank you. I'm curious, thinking about potential uses, and I agree with during this, if either option 1 or 2, if these bodies commit to this plan, I agree that they shouldn't, no major structural alterations. But how are we going to approach potential users or stakeholders for the facility? Are we going to advertise that this facility is available for lease, or how are we also going to weigh? There's folks that have interest in it now. How do we weigh competing interests? Who's going to be the deciding body for not only if we advertise it and how, And then when we have interest and people are starting to get serious and wanting to put ink on paper to sign a lease, who's the body that's going to decide which interest is allowed to lease that space? Because there could potentially be competing interest for that. And so I'm just curious how the borough is going to go about, or this body is going to go about that process. Because people are asking questions about what are we going to do with it. There's a lot of ideas, but when we actually get closer to that, what kind of equity is there?
Basically, it's a borough facility at this point on there, and it will remain that at this time. Basically, this agreement on the three-way is to keep things from freezing up in the utilization of the gym and the bathrooms there. Any other space other than storage, like we're talking with the school district about, all goes through the manager, and then she would be looking to bring things to us as necessary on there. But there's some options, but I think going through the manager is the best thing. Continue, Bo.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, it would go through the manager. Would that then come before the assembly to make that decision?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Larry.
Well, just to follow up, it's also correct that I've heard names thrown around, but we would have to advertise and go to bid. So we're not looking at a single source where we're going to say, you're interested, we're going to go to you, because like any other thing, it would have to be advertised, and we may have 15 people want to utilize it, not one agency that's currently talking to use it. Is that correct?
Amy?
I think, yes, we do absolutely have rules around how we dispose of buildings, but I think that we'd have to take in consideration what's the best use for the community. And, if a public school can remain a community facility, I think that would weigh into the judgment on who we sold it to. But of course, there's definitely rules we would have to look at if we were going to dispose of it.
Well, those
Just like we do
stipulations
everything
would be
else.
part of your bid advertisement for what you're saying. We would still have to advertise it
Yes,
publicly.
yes.
Mike. And then Jim.
Thanks. So in the case that we were able to find a tenant, would the lease payments be applied equally to the three partners for reducing operating costs? Would that be the vision?
Yeah, one of the things is it would probably increase the operating costs, not reduce, because you're going to have additional electricity. The sewer and water rates are based on the occupancy, and as the occupancy goes up, and then your heating is going to go up. So right now, I'd rather not have much of anyone except maybe somebody in an office there of some sort during the day, just to see what exactly the base utilities are going to run.
Okay, and if I could follow up, just to be clear, so would lease payments then go to reduce the district and the city and the borough's contributions to utilities and upkeep?
Potentially. But like I said, the costs are going to go up a bit, so it's got to be done carefully and not rushed into, I think. Jim?
Question, does the borough currently lease any structures in the city or the borough? Are there buildings that the borough does lease?
We lease to the city of Kodiak in this building
And
here.
do you have it by square foot? What is your lease?
Yes.
What is the lease amount flexible? I mean, or do you have a set amount that you require to, I mean, if you have some people that are interested, I mean, what are you going to say? You're going to be able to say, well, this is what we leased the borough building for. It's X number per square foot. I'm curious about that.
We set
Amy?
the lease with the city of Kodiak based on the cost of maintaining the building and the utilities for the building, including the snow removal, sanding, all the stuff. So the finance director knows how much the cost of the building is, and then when we're figuring out what the lease rate is, we try to make sure that we can cover some of that stuff. So we also have a lease with the Red Cross, and that lease is based on, we know what the cost of that building is, and our goal is just to cover the cost of the building. So we try to, there is no one set square foot rate that we have. Every facility is different.
It would seem that if you have multiple tenants, then the cost actually would go down, I would believe. I mean, if you've got one tenant in there and they're using 1/3 of the building, that's going to be one rate. But if you've got full utilization of all the area, the costs are going to go up, like Scott said, but then I would think the rate actually would go down per tenant. Is there in the plan to have multiple tenants, or are we just looking for one tenant?
I don't think there's a plan right now other than the gym space and storage. So, Mike?
Yeah, I'll just say, as I'm thinking through this plan, I'm very comfortable with the idea of preserving the availability of the facility for the community, and this go slow approach and getting through a few years. That certainly makes sense to me.
Thank you. Jim?
I see we have a representative from the YMCA. We just did an MOU last night for the daycare, no, the after-school care.
After school.
With the three buildings that are going to be under use, and I would be curious as if the YMCA might be interested in extending that to some kind of a daycare operation. Is that something that's been talked about?
We talked about, Amy and I met with them today, with Nate, and basically what he's saying is depends. Right now, they're interested in setting up the after-school program and getting that fully functioning over the next course of the year and take a look at things, but not doing anything right now.
Possibility.
For the future. Yes. There's different options that they have, and they'll have to take a look at it. And would have to go to his board and that too. So, but they are receptive to entertaining something there. So, Larry.
Is it, at least I've heard at the board meeting, a number of organizations have contacted you about use of the building?
Yes. I've had well, some of them aren't very practical. So, but lots. There are some really good ones. There was an aerial silk course thing that scared me. There was putting a pool in the cafeteria for more child safety lessons. There was a children's museum, which I think is great. And so there's a lot of different. I've been contacted by some nonprofits. Talk about a WeWork space where people come in and have office space where they don't have offices here. That's something that the marketplace actually looked at downtown. So we do have some good ideas. We're just going to need to figure out how to manage that and have someone on site if we have tenants and figure that access out. So there's a lot of definite possibilities that we could use, and it wouldn't change the structure of the school. And we could bring some rent money in. So I think that's a really great opportunity. But I'm not aware of commitment yet, or like the Children's Museum is just getting off the ground, and they don't even have a nonprofit set up yet. But that is something that they said, like, wouldn't that be great if you could give us some classrooms to get started? So a lot of the people who have called weren't interested in paying rent, or was like, really low rent. So once that space is available and we know what we can offer, it'll be interesting to see who really is interested, for sure.
Cindy?
Thank you. I was going to ask if I could ask a question. I've never been on this side of the dais. I'm usually out there. Currently, the school district pays rent for our non-educational spaces. If we would be part of the split in the cost, would we have to pay for any storage space that we were in that building?
It's something that'll have to be discussed. Good question. In a perfect world, I would have preferred to see the school district hang on to it and take care of the leasing and all operations of it personally, until you see exactly what the impact is to the students over a period of a couple of years. But since you're looking to move out and you would like it to be continued as a gym, there needs to be some buy-in on that. And I would say right now, because it wouldn't need to be heated, it's just a matter of trying to keep it from freezing on everything. That can be discussed on there. I just would rather not see you throw a bunch of things away or give them away that you're going to need at a later date is part of what concerns me.
Exactly.
So, it's a matter of trying to work together on those things. I don't have that answer right now on there.
Yeah, my thoughts is that if we are, and I'm not going to speak for them, but if we were going to utilize some of the space for storage and we are paying part of the utilities bill, then it would be in the district's best interest not to have to pay rent for storage, since we're footing part of the bills, if that's where this agreement comes to. It doesn't seem like it would be fair to the district that we're paying for part of the utilities bills, but then we're also having to turn around and pay rent on space that we're using for storage. So that's just, as a superintendent, trying to be fiscally responsible.
Right now, this $90,000 figure that came up with, we were talking about somewhere around 70,000 was half of the 140,000. But I didn't think included janitorial. So we bumped it up to the 90 to then split 3 ways. So make sure that we've got it. So you have some buy-in in there, which I think gives you a little bit of room.
Well,
Cindy, you were going to speak.
Just one other cost that we need to include is internet, because if we're going to be keeping the cameras, we need to keep the internet running, and so that's also a monthly cost that was not part of the utilities, because that's in a separate.
I'm hoping there's a little bit of wiggle room in
Yep.
that 90 to help cover that. Do you think I'm accurate on that, Larry?
part of the problem with internet use, it's E-rate funded, and E-rate has real specific guidelines on what you can use it for.
I think we can get the internet without the E-rate.
Yeah, I think so too. I was going to say, in reference to storage of furniture, that's protecting the future, just like maintaining the building, and I don't think, storage should be charged. It's, we open up a new building and have no furniture, it's going to cost us a fortune, and I realize a lot of the replacement furniture is going on. That's good, because then you won't have to buy new stuff for other buildings, but anything that can be preserved and feed reopening should be stored, or it costs a lot more money for the borough in the long run. And it's, trading the present for the future, and I don't want to do that.
So, going forward, I think, do we agree that maybe there is some merit to this three-way split on there in pursuing that? Trying to get something we all agree on.
Yeah, I'll speak up there and say, looks promising. We'll have to take it to the full board
Yeah.
to get their buy-in, of course.
Just like we will, too.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't have any concerns with the overall plan. The
And then
big
be
picture.
looking to talk with the city, too, on there for this. So it was encouraging tonight, talking with Pat. So, as far as future discussion, I think we can follow up on this, but what's the wishes of the board as far as setting a next meeting? Mike?
Is there a timeline for making this decision?
Well, we're looking at trying to do this effective July 1st. And this 3-year thing here is something we should probably, I would say we'd probably have to take that discussion to each of our boards and then report to them and see if we're in agreement and then meet again. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
You want to bring it to the next board meeting? Which would be the 16th.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be. I believe that we could put it on the agenda for the 16th of June. I know that we as a board have discussed it already, and like Mike has said, that there's some money that we sort of earmarked to take care of our part, not knowing what that part might be. This has made things a lot more clear, and I think it's going to be more amenable to the whole board, even with the fiscal responsibility, the options, the troubles that we're having with our fiscal budget.
Mike, were you going to say something? No, okay. Larry, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the only organization I've heard that has actually come to me to talk about it would be preschool. You know, a desperate need for preschool in Kodiak, and the suggestion is a group right now looking at that to be able to utilize it for that. So just something to think about in the future. I think that would benefit like everybody if we had something like that, and certainly working class parents.
So, and that's something we can look at for the future, but with immediately things coming up, this is a starting point on there. So, Amy, anything you'd like to say?
If the assembly was going to vote on it, unless we make a special meeting on June 26th, we'd have to wait until July 3rd, which would be fine. But as far as timing goes, we don't have meetings in June, so
We could do a special meeting on the 25th.
6th.
Oops, I'm up a month. Yes,
Imagine the
26th.
school district has enough oil in the tank to carry us over.
Turn those thermostats down.
Well, they should already be turned down. So,
I'm guessing.
well, I hope you turn the thermostats down too. Excuse me.
Yeah, that timeline makes sense to me. If, I do think it's important that all three bodies commit. It's one thing to ask for continued access. It's another thing to have the financial commitment to that. So I would encourage all three bodies to weigh in as soon as possible. And then once we have that in place, I think we need to be realistic about what comes next and move that along as quickly as possible. And I do feel that we need to compile information for potential users of this facility and publicly make that publicly known. A lot of the discussions up till now have been behind the scenes. People ask me, what are you going to do with that place? And we've heard some ideas, but I never really communicate what those are. I think this would be a good use of our time at the next meeting is to publicly communicate what people have brought to us and through whichever body, and compile those potential user groups for stakeholders in the facility. That way the public can think about it and maybe weigh in and give us a preference on which direction we should take it.
Yeah.
But I do think we need to make these types of discussions more public now that have a potential plan in place. If that's solidified, I think we should.
And right now, the idea is to ease into this. I see no rush to lease the space out at all. That's secondary on there. So while we weigh, because we've got a lot of other things to work on also. So, Jim.
Yeah, I think maybe as far as the board, we should probably have it on a work session, Cindy, don't you think, as far as discussing it first? I mean, if the timeline, as far as committing with a vote, it should be, we should all kind of be on the same line at pretty much the same time. So I think maybe for us, putting this in a work session might be the best option.
Yeah, we don't have a work session until August, because we have a regular meeting on June 16th, and then we have only one meeting during July, and so that's a regular meeting on July 14th. Unless we stood up a special meeting as a work session.
Well, as far as the low use, we could give everyone. I don't necessarily see a problem with waiting till August. Amy, what's your thoughts on there? So, like I said, it's if we got the basic framework that we're looking to try and split this thirds. Got to talk with the city and see, because that's who's gonna be running the rec program out of there. Normally, they run it out of all your facilities, like what they've been doing. So we'll find out, and we can,
Just a question.
Larry,
North Star's a designated evacuation for anybody past Mill Bay Fire Station.
yeah, it's already listed there.
We're continuing that.
Continue
Who's
use
going
as
to
an
manage it?
emergency
Because the school
shelter if
district did all
needed.
the management, opened up the facility, took care of it, managed it, so are we making,
Bayside.
are they gonna start doing it now? Have they said they're gonna do that?
I will ask Chief Ellis about what their capacity is to do that, but I think that would be the best borough source of employee right there.
Or the Red Cross, simply because first responders probably will be too busy to go up to North Star, but
In-
anyway.
In case of tsunami warning or that's the evacuation point for Bayside Fire Department. That's
And
where they
anybody-
muster all the equipment is up there. So, well, we got some things we can look into. But if we basically got agreement to try and work along a third. And we've got to talk with the city and see if they're in agreement. That was a verbal acknowledgement by Pat tonight, so, that's not in concrete, but we were hoping earlier that this would come, but depend upon what you guys wanted to do exactly on there. So we will, I'll say as far as so we'll list out eventually some of that, we'll come up with other items as far as future discussion items. Next meeting sometime in August, that'll let us get our meeting in July done. That gives the city time, gives the school district time. Is that okay? Because it's not going to be that much right now. We got to set it up as an enterprise fund so that things are accounted for, and we'll see what it is. But right now, it's a third. The budget being 90,000, we're estimating 30,000 split. Just so there's a number there for everyone concerned. All righty. So we'll leave the next meeting date up. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second?
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. We are adjourned at 7:17.
With all the dialogue that we have with other agencies, to know that we are going to be accused of building a RFP based on a specific group of people. I think we need to be very careful of that. Pardon?
I said that's a good thought. That's
I mean, we don't want to commit until.
a legitimate worry. And maybe we lease, if we were at that point, we would lease it to YMCA instead of dispose.
Well, I think we have a management group to take care of the building. I don't think we want to be involved in a bunch of leases of the building. But we could hire somebody, just like we were talking about if we ever did something with the buildings. So it keeps us out of it. And here are the parameters if you're using the building.
Yep.
Bond for damages.